Okay.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the December 7th staff meeting. It's 9 o'clock. Welcome everybody watching on the KPTS and YouTube and Facebook page. So thank you, commissioners, for being here again on this Tuesday. And with that, we will call the meeting to order and we'll hand it over to Tom Stoltz.
Good morning, Chairman and Commission. We have two main topics to discuss during staff this morning, and then an ancillary, just a short thing on legislative platform. But the two main topics we're going to spend some time this morning is talking about the county safety policy. It's evolving over time here, and we have Brent Shelton and Elizabeth Wingo down from Finance to kind of talk through where we're currently at. And then we're going to do some discussion regarding COVID, particularly focusing on vaccination policy as best we are understanding it from the state of Kansas at this time. Tim will talk about some testing, and then we'll talk about the modified quarantine order as well. So on the safety policy issue, before Elizabeth starts, the county has had a history of having work comp and safety office personnel embedded in the finance department. Back in the day, Mick McBride was here it was a long time employee, Diana Mansouri. They kind of tag teamed work comp and safety. They both retired at a time very close in proximity. And at that time, we contacted IMA and began to third-party vend some of this work comp and safety policy issue. It's evolving to this, to where we're at today, where Elizabeth will give you an update on kind of what the restructuring looks like. And there's a number of policies that are impacted by safety, a number of HR policies, a half a dozen or so, where they all have to make sure, we have to make sure that they are, that we deconflict them all to make sure that it's a similar message throughout. So we're in the process of doing that all, and I just wanted to take this time to kind of give you an update. This is by no means a finished product today, but I want to make sure that you're comfortable with how we're progressing and moving forward. So with that, Brent or Elizabeth, whoever wants to go first.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Brent Shelton, your Deputy CFO, and I'm just going to kind of set the table for Elizabeth this morning. For those of you that don't know Elizabeth, Elizabeth Wingo has assumed the role earlier this year as our risk management coordinator. She came to that role after having served as the work comp administrator, so she's been involved in this for some time now, but has just recently begun working strategically in terms of a direction for where we want to take the safety program. And she's also responsible day to day for just making sure that the risk management activities are taken care of. So we've developed to this point kind of a goal for where we want to go with safety, as well as some initial first steps that we've begun taking and some that we're going to begin taking after the first of the year. It's based on the data. We're trying to drive the program based on the data and where we see the needs. So I'm going to give this over to Elizabeth and let her walk you through some of the ideas. And this is a dialogue. We want to hear from you in terms of what you think. And I'll be taking some notes and we can incorporate that as we move forward. So, Elizabeth?
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Elizabeth Wingo, your Risk Management Coordinator. This is the same presentation that was emailed to you earlier, just now has the Tony magic added to it. So same information, just a little more pizzazz. We're going to start with just going over some data points about where our program stands right now from our self-insured perspective. And then we're going to move into a framework we've developed for looking out over the next 5 years. And then we have a pretty lofty goal of what we're hoping to accomplish in 5 years. So all of this is kind of stacking up to that point. So we'll start with the work comp program. This is looking at expenditures over the past 5 years, including current year through November 23rd. And as you can see, we are seeing an overall general uptick of the cost of expenditures associated with work comp claims. Work comp claims do tend to incur expenses rather quickly after the accident. So we start incurring those expenses typically within 30, 60, 90 days, all the way through completion of the claim. And we do have some claims that resolve quite quickly, We also have other claims that do take several years to resolve or are ongoing claims. We do have claims dating back to the 80s and the 90s that are still very active. So those are incurring cost over time. We are seeing both a general uptick in the cost of medical claims in terms of the cost of medical services. So that's adding up. Pharmaceuticals are more expensive now than they used to be. This is a nationwide issue. We're impacted by that as well. We are also seeing an uptick in claims itself. So we look at claims and work comp based on two areas. One is the number of claims received, and then the number of claims that require medical care and expenses. So you can see the blue line is the claims that we've received, and this is all notifications of injuries from Sedgwick County employees for on-the-job injuries. So you can see there is that slight uptick going there. Again, these numbers are through November 23rd. So we are over 300 claims at this point for this year, with about half of those incurring medical expense so far. And again, that general uptick in medical claims requiring medical care over time. So the number of claims that need medical care, obviously, that helps drive up the cost that we're incurring every year. All departments have a risk associated with them, even Division of Finance, which we would assume to be a very low risk operation, does incur claims every few years. As you can see, we're right smack there in the middle. Over the past 3 years, we have had a couple claims in the Division of Finance. You'll see there are some departments that spike more than others. And those are going to be our departments that have what we would consider more physically demanding jobs. And that's where we would expect to see those work comp injuries come from. If we received 50 claims a year from finance, that would be very alarming. We would, because it's such a low risk operation, versus a high number of claims from EMS and fire, where they are engaged in a lot of lifting and strenuous activities. There's more chance of risk of getting injured. So that's where we would expect to see those claims. We're now going to pivot to the other self-insured portion of our program, which is general and vehicle claims. These incur costs slightly different than work comp claims. So whereas in work comp, that cost is assumed as the claim progresses, in vehicle and general claims, the cost appears at the end of the claim. It doesn't get paid out over time. There's typically a single final payment. So that means, unfortunately, the numbers get skewed in the year that the claim is settled. As you can see, we have in this year and last year had some pretty high expenses for those claims. And part of that has to do with how long it takes to settle those claims. Claims in excess of $25,000 do tend to take 2 years and 4 months to resolve. So on the last slide, we saw a really low number for 2018. There was only one claim settled that year in excess of $25,000 versus both in 2019 and 2020, we've already had 4 claims for each year, which incurred an expense in excess of $25,000. And because of, and not, those claims weren't started in 2020, they're from prior years. And so again, that number gets skewed to the year in which it's settled. For vehicle and general claims, there is overall more consistency in the number of claims that we have in those areas. In 17, 18, and 19, you can see it hovers around that 140, 145 mark. It is down this year. That possibly could be due to the pandemic. We've just had less opportunity for those claims to occur. Because of how these claims can be filed, in work comp, a claim is filed typically in a very quick manner. You're injured on a Monday, you've probably notified your supervisor the same day. We have paperwork probably no later than Wednesday or Thursday of that week. And that's because of statutory requirements. In general and vehicle claims, the statutory limit for filing a claim is significantly longer. It's up to 2 years. And so it can take quite a long time for us to become aware of a claim and then start this entire process. So you can see in blue the claims that are received, red are the claims that we've made payments on, and orange are the ones that are still open. So those kind of change as time. So right now we have a lot of open claims. We haven't made a lot of payments on new claims for 2020, and that'll change here in the next coming months. So as we look at claims and we open claims, we look for our claims preventable or non-preventable in nature. Preventable claims typically, I would generally associate with inattentive behaviors. So this could be something as simple as an employee takes their eye off the road to look at something and they accidentally cause an accident. They're trying to come to a complete stop and they misjudge the distance. Or it could be something like they are attempting to secure equipment. They believe it to be secured. They move on to the next step and the equipment is not secured and an injury, then it results in that. Those would be preventable things. Non-preventable things, property damage, when our buildings are damaged by a member of the public, windows are broken, fencing is damaged. We can't prevent those things from happening. We also see a lot of claims in which members of our staff are injured defending themselves against an attack by a resident or an inmate that they are taking care of. And then sometimes we also see failure of PPE. So PPE, or personal protective equipment, is designed to mitigate risk, so drastically reduce the risk of injury occurring. It does not eliminate risk. So sometimes we see this with safety glasses. You're wearing your safety glasses and a speck of dust from whatever you're cutting still comes up under those glasses, causing an eye irritation. Most recently, we've seen with N95s a strap breaking and that causing a sudden shift in the mask, causing an eye irritation as well. So there are all sorts of things that can happen with PPE that can, in a non-preventable way, cause injury. So the challenges we face now, we have a vehicle fleet and driving policy that was last updated in 2011. Last year, we had started a work group to review this policy. Unfortunately, then the pandemic happened, so we haven't been able to work on this. We also have an outdated employee safety handbook. It was last updated in 2015. It's just not accessible and usable to our employees. We also have a safety level, county level policy, our safety and loss prevention policy was last updated in 1998. It no longer fits our organizational needs. And we currently don't have a formal system for collecting feedback from employees or supervisors about how they perceive safety at Sedgwick County, how they understand safety training, what they would like to see, any concerns or issues that they have. So with all of that, where do we go forward? Well, we've already started implementing a few programs. The current one is bringing back the safety slogan contest. We launched this back on November 19th, and this runs through noon on December 14th, so this coming Monday. And this is an opportunity for employees to be engaged with the county safety program. And what they do is they submit a creative safety slogan. The winner then is featured, their slogan is put on a poster along with pictures of county employees illustrating good safety techniques. And that poster is then hung for an entire year around all of our county facilities. This program has not been active for a couple years, and so we brought it back. We have already seen tremendous response from our employees. Yesterday afternoon, we'd already received over 115 submissions. So that is a lot. We are very excited for the enthusiasm from our employees already. So our goal with that is to have that slogan selected and the poster ready to go out in the first quarter, hopefully very early in January, as we help kick off some other safety programming in January for next year. And then the other two things that we're working on right now that we're hoping to finish in Q1 of 2021, the first is the Employee Safety Handbook. So this project is being aided with the county management interns. They're helping us review this. They're looking at examples from other municipalities, and we're looking at creative ways to make this more accessible and more user-friendly for our employees. And then we're also working on a county-level respirator protection plan. So this was something that was kind of already on our radar to work on for the next couple of years. The health department reached out to me and graciously offered a full-time grant-funded position to help with this. And so we are now full steam ahead working on this. The goal here is to create a plan that works for normal business operations that addresses fit testing, training, education, all the different types of respirators that can be used by our employees. And that way then, should we ever find ourselves in a pandemic again, we have a good solid program that we can scale up in response. Because the goal here is to take care of our employees every single day of the year. So looking out from 21 through 25, these are all framework ideas of things we'd like to accomplish. We're again looking for your feedback. If there's something you think we're missing that is a high priority, we would like to know so we can find a spot for that in the plan. So in 2021, the first thing we're hoping to do is to roll out an employee safety perception survey. This was a recommendation from IMA. They've done this with a lot of their municipalities that they work with. There's also a nationwide push in the risk management world to do these. This creates hard data that we can use to understand from our employees and supervisors' perspectives what's working, what are they concerned about, where are there gaps that we're just not even aware of that exist, so we can address those. So once we do the survey, that will take a while to complete, to get all of those survey responses back. That will help us develop our safety training program. IMA, again, is a great partner and has a lot of training material available for us to use and implement. We just need to know what we need to implement. So that survey will help us know what to do there. In 21, we're also hoping to complete that review of the vehicle and fleet policy. In addition to that, review our defensive driving training program. And then also the development of a county-level accident review and safety committee. So 21, I consider kind of a more focusing at the county level. And then in 2022, we're hoping to pivot more to the departmental level in our focus. So we'll again have the results of that employee perception survey to help guide us in where we're going. But things we are already looking at, helping provide consistency to safety committees. We have some departments that have very robust safety committees. We have some departments that are interested in creating one. They just don't know where to go with that. And so we're looking to create kind of some frameworks for them, some training, education. So we have good, solid safety committees across the county. The introduction of safety inspections. And this is not meant to sound overwhelming for departments. We're looking at very basic sort of just monthly safety inspections, a lot of housekeeping sort of things. Think of it like checking the workstations to make sure cables aren't all amuck. We're not using extension cords where it's not safe to use them. Fire extinguishers are where they're supposed to be, things of that nature. And then we're also going to work through the county level accident and safety committee, developing monthly safety training topics for departments to do. Again, we already have some departments doing wonderful monthly training topics. We just want to bring some consistency to what we're doing across the organization. And it's not just about developing policies, developing programs, and educating people. We also want to recognize and reward employees and departments that are doing a wonderful job. And so in 2022, we're hoping to add a employee and departmental recognition program that will acknowledge good things that are already happening with our employees for safety. So proactive safety, not just, an incident occurs and we learn what we shouldn't do and we add program, but employees and departments that are going out of their way to do really good safety from the get-go. And then in 2023, we'd like to do an update of that safety perception survey. get feedback from our employees. What is going well? What have we missed the mark on? What new concerns do they have that we can address? 24 is going to be the implementation of those findings. And then the big lofty goal is 2025. It's the Kansas Department of Labor SHAPE recognition. So SHAPE is the Safety and Health Award for Public Employers program. This requires an annual comprehensive safety inspection from the Kansas Department of Labor. And that means they would come into all of our facilities and do a full inspection of each of our facilities. As described by IMA, the inspector just kind of moves in for a week as they go through all of our facilities. Currently, we do not receive comprehensive annual safety inspections from the Kansas Department of Labor. There's also a monthly safety training requirement from the state based on your number of employees. And so that's, again, why we want to add some consistency and strength to what departments are already doing so we can start to reach that training hour goal. And then the last part has to do with statistics. The state looks at the DART and TRC, and they need to be below the state average. So DART is the days away, restricted, or transferred work. This refers to when an employee is injured and they're either away from work because there's no work for them to do, or it's unsafe for them to work, or they have restrictions from the treating provider, and so they can't do their regular job, or they're transferred to another position on a temporary basis. So the benchmark for that is 1.6. Our rate currently is 1.645, and that little asterisk indicates that this is based on incomplete information. We do have a technology problem right now in risk management. Our risk master, which is our information system, doesn't allow us to pull all of these categories to calculate this rate. Right now, this is only based on days away. This does not include restricted or transferred cases. So we're already above the benchmark, and it's not including all the necessary information. So we have a ways to go. And then we also need to be below the benchmark for total recordable cases. That's 5.6. Currently, our rate is 10.922. The only way to bring that number down is to have fewer incidences occur at Sedgwick County. And specifically, those have to be incidences that require medical care beyond first aid. So we are almost double the rate. So that's part of why we're looking at all these policy and safety trainings to try to bring that rate down so we can hit this benchmark that is needed for the state. And with that is all I have for today. Okay. I will answer your questions.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. Very comprehensive report. Commissioner Cruz?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Elizabeth, for being here today. I just have a couple of questions. You said at the very beginning of this that we have claims from the 80s and 90s. Did I hear that right?
That is correct. We still have active work comp claims from the 80s and 90s.
Is that normal? How are we going to get those resolved? That seems like a really long time.
Those are claims that will not be resolved. They are related to our 2 amputations.
Okay.
So we will provide medical care for life for those 2 individuals.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you for that clarification. On page 14, you say you're going to develop safety committees. How are those selections going to be made for those committees?
The departmental safety committee,
Yeah.
is that what you're speaking of?
Uh-huh.
So some departments already have a structured safety committee within their departments. And so our goal here is to make sure every department has a safety committee. And typically that's made up of, it depends on the size of the department, but it includes some management, typically members kind of all throughout the ranks. They come together, they talk about safety issues. Sometimes they do review of accidents to determine preventability or how they could prevent things from happening in the future.
Okay, so they're going to engage all levels of the departments?
Yes,
Just-
it's
okay.
within the department, and they typically use members from all levels within their department to be on that committee.
Okay, and making sure those committees are going to be diverse is part of that, okay.
Yes.
Page 11, we're talking about the poster. I'm excited to hear that there are 150 or so suggested ideas. Outside of the poster, what other sorts of communications will we have besides a poster hanging on a wall?
This is the first campaign to try to re-engage our employees with our department. This has traditionally been kind of the biggest thing that's happened in risk management. I believe in the past, sometimes they've done a newsletter. I don't know if there's interest from our employees in having that level of communication. That's one of the things we're going to learn in that survey. How do they want to be communicated with? How do we better deliver information to our employees to keep them engaged all year long with what we're doing?
So at an employee staff meeting like we're having here, but at the department level, will we have this discussion? Will there be, Tony could make a really great video. I see him smiling in the back. I think obviously having a poster on a wall is nice, but I wonder if we really want to move the needle with safety precautions, if we're going to actively keep engaging folks with what we're trying to communicate to them. And so I hope that we'll figure out a robust program. Communication is key.
Yes.
There's a lot that you guys have put into this, and it looks like there's time and energy spent. So I hope that we can communicate this all the way down to,
Absolutely.
Every single person. So, no, I think that's all my questions. I appreciate you being here today.
Thank you.
Commissioner Dennis?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. A couple thoughts. Get my hearing aids back. I appreciate where we're at right now, but we have a ways to go, in my opinion. I think probably rather than spend a lot of time going over, I wrote notes through this. Maybe if you and Brent can come down to my office sometime and we can just sit down and talk about safety is what concerns me. I don't want to just focus on certain areas like workman's comp. Granted, that's important. Or just the vehicle accidents. For example, we had over a $500,000 fire in this building not too long ago, and that's part of the safety program. How do we alleviate issues like that? So there are a lot of aspects to the safety program. To talk about, we've got people that go into confined spaces. What kind of training program and what kind of safety program do we have? Safety equipment and so forth. So lifting. There's just so much that is involved in this program. I don't know if we need how that we're going to accomplish to get to where you and I think that we need to go in the future, especially by 2025 or some date in the future. Some of these have to be done immediately. Do we have all of our different review boards in place that we need in order to be able to find out what the cause of an accident was and make sure that it doesn't happen again, so we can get the word out to the rest of the staff on what happened, because an accident report that isn't disseminated really doesn't do a whole lot of good. So I don't know. I don't want to spend a lot of time today on it, but I think that we probably need to take a look at a very comprehensive safety program that involves ground safety, building safety, vehicle safety, confined safety, spaces safety, all of the different aspects that are involved in a safety program. So I appreciate where you're at right now. I think that we've got some things that we could do in the future to enhance that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Dennis. Commissioner Glasscock.
Hey, thank you for coming and presenting today. I have two quick questions. First off, with the Safety and Health Award for public employees, how many organizations or entities are awarded that throughout the state per year?
That information is not clear, and I've reached out to the State of Kansas Department of Labor for additional specifics on this program. I don't suspect that there are a lot of people that aim for this. These are some fairly lofty goals. And even if we can't reach these by 2025, this gives us a direction that we need to consistently be heading. And that's where we want to go. We just want to make sure we are doing absolutely the best in everything we can for our employees. So that's where this program, I think, will help us get there. But when I hear back, I will gladly pass that information along to you.
Then I have one follow-up, not a follow-up, I guess, a different question. Regarding, compensation claims, this doesn't include anything related to COVID or any contracting of illness there or any claims. Is that a separate source?
Correct. These are typically work comp claims will be physical injury claims. There are a few things that can fall under some other categories that are accepted under work comp, but typically when we speak about work comp, we're talking about physical injury claims as a result of work.
That's what I had thought. I just wanted to make sure that
Absolutely.
any of the COVID claims weren't included in that
Correct.
with exposure. So thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the presentation. As I'm sitting here thinking about what's been presented, as a commissioner, we hear sometimes court cases that come before the bench we have to settle at some point. And there's always a story behind that. And unfortunately, I forget the details after some time. And I wish there was a place I could go, a repository somewhere where we could read about, we could find out there's a policy and someone, I don't want to get personal with anybody, but to lose the story is a loss of a lesson learned. And I just think if we were to, if things are still being litigated, obviously it's not the right time, but once things are settled, there's a time where we could, if you will, compile those stories, if nothing else, just more for inspiration, to explain these are why the rules are in place. This is why we do, you have a spotter when you back up a dump truck, for example. This is why you don't plug in an appliance to an outlet and leave for the weekend, for example. These are things we should all know, and we should all do them. But losing those stories and not having that in front of us, I think, is a lost opportunity. I would like to see us, if you will, institute some type of a storybook we could go to for inspiration and kind of explain these lessons learned and not lose them over time. Again, not to embarrass anybody, but every one of these things, it results in a settlement or a lost, some type of a huge expense for the taxpayers. I just don't want to lose the information. I know sometimes there's a small story that ends up in the paper, and literally 2 weeks later you would have trouble finding that. So I really think there's a way we should maybe think about some way to keep these stories alive for inspiration for future training. That's all I got to say. Thank you very much.
Okay, I don't see anything else, Elizabeth. I appreciate, again, all the information you shared with us. And I think that's true. If you and Brent can get with Commissioner Dennis, it's been an important item in his world, and he's got some value and some experience to bring to that conversation. So appreciate that.
Brandon, anything else from you, or are you good? I just thank you, commissioners, for the comments, and we took notes. I do want to say that, the conflict with safety policy and program is everybody gets busy with operations. Everybody gets busy in their work world, and then whenever we begin to talk about review boards and training and meetings and inspections, you lose operation time when you do that. But safety is so important that organizationally we need to emphasize it. I think I'm hearing across the board that you all deem it important, and we want to make a real commit on this. And so that will have a little bit of budget implication. You'll begin to see some things in 2022 budget preparation that might impact safety, because I think we've gotten complacent in the county over a generation, and it's time to maybe reinforce and reinvigorate the safety program. But that comes at a cost organizationally. It comes at a cost of time and a cost of effort. So I appreciate the comments today. We will get back with you. And to Commissioner Howell's point, the goal of any safety program, mistakes happen. People make mistakes. The goal is to learn from it and not repeat those mistakes. And to his point, we need an archive system to show that this is where we've been, and we tweak policy, we tweak behavior then, and we hopefully never repeat that same mistake again. So we appreciate the comments. We'll continue to work toward this and report back to you occasionally. Thank you. And with that, Chairman, if it's okay, we change topics now.
Yes, sir.
Let's have Tim come forward and talk about COVID, and we'll start with vaccine update and move on to testing and some other topics.
My notes have testing first, so if it's okay. The testing stuff is brief. Clearly, we're making a transition. I think we can all feel it, a shift from testing to vaccine, and so I'll go over some quick testing stuff, and then we'll talk more about vaccine. Good morning, Commissioners. Last week, the Health Department took 1,855 samples at our drive-through sampling site, at the mobile outreach events, and through the disease containment unit. This did include one mobile outreach event that was exclusively saliva sampling and WSU MDL testing, and so we're making that transition as well. Health Department is in the process of planning a move from the Edgemore drive-through sampling site. This site will be demobilized by December 31st of 2020 as the original 6-month lease comes to an end. The plan is to transition to saliva sampling using the WSU MDL as our testing location, and the new sampling site will be based at Sedgwick County Extension Center in the 4-H Hall, and we will continue to do mobile operations as well. The staff are going to begin transitioning this week. We'll run a couple of small pilots this week, and then we should be fully operational at Extension by the 21st. And that gives us a little bit of time to shut down what's going on out at Edgemore. The Extension Center location is going to offer a mix of appointment and walk-up sampling opportunities. Please watch the website for transition information as we go. Just got off a Zoom call with the extension staff to go over some details, but we're preparing signage. We're going to help them figure out how to direct people so that we don't have a mix of regular extension business and our sampling site. I think we've got a good plan put in place for that. So happy to answer any questions about testing on the Health Department's behalf.
Commissioner Howell, and then Commissioner Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just as I'm thinking about the Extension Center opportunity, I assume that people will need to come inside the facility to get access to it.
They're going to come inside the 4-H hall. So we'll have people enter through there's exterior doors on the west side, and so they'll enter one door and they'll exit another door, but we'd like to contain them within the 4-H hall.
Well, presumably many of them will be symptomatic, some of them may not be symptomatic, but we should presume that all of them are potentially positive for COVID because that's why they're there. Are we going to need to step up our sanitation, cleaning of that facility? So how can you please talk about how we can protect people as they go in and out of that facility?
Again, the folks that are going to be going in and out of the Extension Center for Extension Center business won't be intermixing with the folks that are there for sampling. We will use the electrostatic cleaning machines that we've got. The facilities department has a really good cleaning protocol, and they will execute that in the 4-H hall to make sure that that space is safe for guests and our staff. You know, we've got staff that are in that setting collecting those samples, and so they're going to continue to use safety measures and PPE and that sort of thing as well.
What about doors? Are the doors going to be able to be opened up with
We are
automated
working on that. Right now, those exterior doors don't have handles, and so facilities is going through the necessary procedures to get some handles so that they'll be able to enter through one door and again exit through another. And we've got signage that we're placing throughout the building or around the building at other entrances to make sure that people understand that where to go to enter the building, and then we'll have them exit another door.
Do we have a plan on how many stations inside that room will be able to do testing?
We're still working through the staffing plan for that, but and I'm going to talk a little bit about another testing resource that will be in the community for the month of December and maybe longer. And so we're going to try and match that to the volume demand. The other thing that we all know is going on right now is that a number of employers have implemented sampling procedures as well using the WSU lab. And so we've seen a little bit of a downturn in sampling demand at our drive-through site right now. I think it's in response to some of the other sampling that's going on in the community. And so we'll match the staffing with the demand.
I'll just say I'm personally very impressed with the WSU saliva testing. Once again, it's painless. That's an advantage. It's still a PCR test, so it's an excellent technology. I really like everything they're doing about that, and the throughput is really really high. So last time I checked, I think we had 400 employers in the community that either had already signed up or had already gone through the training and are already submitting samples to the MDL processing center. And so they're doing a good job of that, and I'm looking forward to seeing this done. Do we plan to provide testing for asymptomatic people?
As we are doing now, yes.
Okay. And do we have a plan for any nasopharyngeal testing at this site?
We're going to kind of see what demand is for that. There are some employers that demand that there are some community members that are more comfortable with that type of a test than any other type of a test. We don't know if we're going to need to do that there, or if we'll be able to address all of the nasopharyngeal testing needs through our mobile clinics. And so we'll develop a response to the community based on what kind of requests we're getting.
Well, it's my hope that we would have a majority of testing would be saliva, but we'd offer, if you will, nasopharyngeal and possibly mouth swabs for people who need special test methods for whatever reason. Something that should still be available to them if that's what they need. So,
Of
perfect.
course.
Thank you very much for the presentation.
Okay, Commissioner Cruz?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Tim, for the update. I know when we were looking for the Edgemore facility, the drive-through component was a pretty big deal, getting our staff out of the weather, getting them protected from the elements. And now we're doing away with drive-through, and we're going to have folks enter one side of a building and then exit the other side of the building, so they'll have to kind of walk all the way around. Is that how you're?
Well, actually, there's two exterior doors for the 4-H hall, and the 4-H
Okay.
hall runs pretty much the length of the building, so they'll be able to enter one door, offer their sample, and then exit the other door on the exterior
On
of
the
the
same
building.
side where they're parking? Okay.
Correct.
Will we have, will there be any opportunity for people to give a sample out of their car, or that's no longer an option?
Right now, we're looking at bringing people in. We'll see how
Okay.
things go, and if they need to do it out of their car, we may be able to work that out as well.
Okay. Well, it's a fluid, changing environment, so I appreciate the flexibility that you guys have shown with setting up yet another testing site for our community. So I appreciate your work on this. Thanks.
Thank you. Staff have done a really nice job in this transition as well.
Okay, Tim, I don't see any other questions. We'll
Okay.
Go on next.
I do want to talk a little bit about another sampling opportunity. So there's going to be an additional no-cost sampling and testing option in our community beginning this week. Well Health has been contracted by KDHE to operate a number of pop-up testing sites across Kansas based on population. In Sedgwick County, we will begin to see on Thursday the 10th that Well Health will operate 4 collection sites across the community. Holy Savior Academy, Health Corps, Intrust Bank Arena, and WSU Metroplex will be open 6 days a week through December 30th as a way to increase testing across the state. There are some sampling sites that are already open. Newton has a site. There's some in southeast and southwest Kansas already. So Well Health has been doing this for about a week in Kansas. We're kind of the second wave. And their capacity will reach 2,000 tests per day. They won't start at that, but they'll get to the point where they're able to process 2,000 tests a day, and it will be a mix of appointments and walk-up testing. Much of their testing will be drive-through. Well Health will be responsible for managing the scheduling, the sampling, the testing, and the results communication with patients. And so this is just an ancillary testing opportunity that's in the community brought to us by KDHE. If people are interested, I checked last night. It was not, the Wichita sites are not available. Checked this morning. They are listed. Go Get Tested, Kansas. If you search for that, I think it's gogettested.com, but if you search for Go Get Tested, you'll find that, and you'll have an opportunity to begin the enrollment process online. I'd be happy to answer any more questions about that. Again, it's an addition, it supplements the work that we're doing and that many other providers in the community are doing in terms of testing.
Tim, I'll just jump in.
Okay.
So you said Holy Savior, Metroplex, Health Corps, and who was the other one?
Intrust Bank Arena.
Intrust Bank.
Their parking lot.
Okay, and so, and then in addition to our, on the ridge, I don't really notice any south locations. So is there,
We have offered, or we've suggested that they consider the Machinists Union, which is down south, and we've also been in talks with them. If that doesn't work out for Well Health, we may want to start focusing our mobile site deployment to the south part of town, or the south part of the county, because we recognize that same hole that you saw there.
okay. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Glasscock?
Thank you, Commissioner Cruz, for asking one of my questions. The second question is, you said 2,000 tests a day. Is that over all 4 locations, or that 2,000 per location? I don't know if that was
That's over 4. They have different sizes. They have a 250 per day, and that's what they'll have at Holy Savior and at Health Corps. They have a 500 per day operation that they'll have at Interest Bank Arena, and then at the WSU Metroplex, they'll have their biggest process, and that'll accommodate up to 1,000 folks a day.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Howell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just 2 quick questions. What's the method of testing?
My understanding, it is a saliva PCR test.
Okay. And you know what, is this probably through CRL, I would assume then?
My understanding is that they have a mobile lab that they will bring with them.
Okay. So the turnaround should be, or the results should be pretty quick.
They should be. I think that on their website, it talks about 48 to 96 hours, but in many of the locations that they've stood up already, they're somewhere under 30 hours.
And do the people get their results through a patient portal electronically as well?
That's my understanding.
Thank you
yes.
for your answers.
Okay. Don't see any other questions, Tim?
Okay. Let's see where we're at here. Okay. There have been, and there are a number of questions about vaccines, and so I'm going to try and provide some information about COVID-19 vaccines. I'm going to provide what we know at this point. I'm going to ask everyone, including the public, to understand that this information is being updated frequently, and it is certainly subject to change. With all that being said, it's important to know that the health department has experience and training with large-scale vaccination clinics. Most recent would have been the H1N1 about 10 years ago now. The COVID-19 vaccine will arrive soon to community partners. Health department will not likely be one of the recipients in that initial round. The CDC is providing guidance to KDHE. KDHE will offer further guidance to the health department, and the health department has been planning for this vaccine for a number of months and in consultation with experts in the community. Systems are in place to track vaccines and related PPE entrusted to the county within the health department and emergency management. And health has started the vaccine planning with an initial planning team meeting in June. And that team includes leadership staff from the health department and emergency management, the public health emergency planning staff, and then contractor staff that have been brought in to supplement the health department staffing and expertise. In September, the health department conducted a planning exercise, and in October, Dr. Mins had his first meeting with a separate medical team to consider prioritization. In November, cold storage units were ordered, and the health department submitted their first draft plan to KDHE. Kansas is expected to receive about 24,000 doses in their first shipment of the vaccine, which will come from Pfizer, and that shipment is expected to be delivered in mid-December after FDA approval of an emergency use authorization, and then additional vaccine should be received in the community every week following, with approximately 150,000 doses statewide expected to be received by the end of the month. Initial vaccine distribution will be geared towards healthcare providers providing care to COVID-19 patients and to long-term care residents and staff, in line with CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practice recommendations. The vaccines will be delivered to pre-positioned locations equipped for ultra-cold storage throughout Kansas. For security reasons right now, KDHE doesn't plan to release that information.
Hey, Tim, Commissioner Cruz has a question.
I just have a question when he's done.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Vaccine distribution will be handled from those pre-positioned locations that have cold storage capabilities, particularly with the Pfizer vaccine. And as vaccine supplies increase, additional populations will be added to the target populations being served, and the general population is expected to begin receiving vaccinations in late spring. While the desire for concrete information is understandable, the vaccine planning process is complicated by a number of factors. One is the changing landscape, including vaccine approval timing, the number of doses available, and the distribution processes. Logistics of cold storage requirements that differ between vaccine manufacturers is a complicating factor. State agencies that are trying to keep up with the changes leads to less communication with local agencies. And so we've struggled a little bit to get information back and forth from KDHE. State agencies are working directly with multiple entities in the county, including the hospital system, commercial pharmacies, as well as health and emergency management departments. And then there are, at times, information discrepancies based on timing between different levels of government. And I just want to make sure that everyone understands that from the health department, emergency management perspective, the priority is the health and safety of everyone in the community. Staff are working to share as much information as we know related to the vaccine, and will continue to provide updates periodically to you and to the community, and we'll continue to make the best decisions possible based on the information that we have available at any given time. Be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Commissioner Cruz?
Thank you. Thank you, Tim, for this update. I'm sure all of us have received multiple questions around this hot topic. I just kind of want to make sure there's clarification around who decides who gets the vaccine first. Is there any way for you to kind of clarify that for every single person watching that will watch later, and how that's decided?
Well, the CDC sets out guidelines, and they offer those to KDHE, and KDHE will make those determinations in terms, particularly early on in the process, and they are going to guide. Some of that decision is going to become evident based on where the vaccine goes. And as I mentioned, the health department will not be one of the first will not be a recipient of those first vaccines. Those are going to be directed to hospital systems so that they can vaccinate their staff that are working with COVID patients, because they're at incredibly high risk. And it'll also be directed to commercial pharmacies that are going to work with nursing, long-term care facilities to vaccinate their staff and their residents. And so those decisions are made at a much higher level than locally. It's just not a local decision. Those decisions are coming from KDHE.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. And can you further clarify hospital systems, though? We have a few hospitals in our community that are specific to different types of demographics. Can you explain what you mean by hospital systems?
The intent of the vaccination distribution of hospital systems, particularly initially, is to treat staff or to vaccinate individuals in hospitals that are caring for COVID-19 patients.
Okay.
And so specialty hospitals, whether they be a surgery center, for example, or a behavioral health hospital, those types of specialty hospitals generally aren't seeing COVID patients right now, and so they would not be the target audience for the initial wave of vaccinations. Again, because the intent of the vaccination is to get it into the people that are at greatest risk, and particularly those folks that work in hospitals treating COVID patients are at greatest risk.
Okay, so just to clarify, CDC is the one sort of determining currently how the vaccine is going to be distributed and who will receive it first. Now, one other further clarification, the 150,000 that will be coming to the state of Kansas by the end of the month, that is a single dose or a double dose, and is that 150,000 Kansans? Can you clarify that number?
Operating with the best information that we have, that is 2 doses for 150,000 individuals.
Okay. And so the thought is now, until, it's further developed, that it's a double dose until they can develop a single dose vaccine.
Correct. I think that at least the 2 that are up for review this week and next are both 2-dose series, and I don't know how close anybody is on a single dose right now.
Okay. And then earlier in your presentation, you mentioned community partners, and those community partners, as of right now, will be hospital systems caring for COVID-19 patients and pharmacies that have partnered with long-term care facilities.
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification and the update.
Okay, Commissioner Howell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think Commissioner Cruz asked many of the questions I had as well. So initially, I think we had planned initially that emergency management would be involved in the distribution of this, but that's actually totally changed. Based on your last answer to Commissioner Cruz, these are going directly to the hospital systems and directly to the pharmacies for those people to receive the vaccinations. Is that correct?
Those first shipments, that's the way they'll be directed. Emergency management is part of the planning process. Dr. Gallagher is part of Dr. Minz's advisory group, and so they're certainly involved in consideration and in the planning process. But
and I certainly think that's the right audience. I completely agree with that strategy. I guess I'd make a pitch especially for our EMS personnel, because that's our mobile emergency room, if you will, and our firefighters. I think that they are dealing with COVID constantly as they're managing calls. They're being exposed to COVID all the time. So I don't know if that would be something we would consider, making a pitch for those folks, trying to make sure that they're included at the earliest possible, opportunity.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I don't think there's any question that they're already in consideration in terms of prioritization, certainly well before the general public.
So I think it'd be prudent at this point for us to estimate the number of residents, number of staff in LTC facilities, as well as the number of medical workers in these hospital systems that would constitute, if you will, what's the population that we're talking about? How many doses would we need for that specific group of people? We ought to be able to answer that question sooner than later. And I don't know if we have someone on that right now, but that would be a really great exercise to figure that out, because if the state's going to get 150,000 people vaccinated through 300,000 doses over a month. By the way, I guess the first one is to come up this month, but they have to have a second vaccination within a month after that. So we'll probably get it into January to get the second dose, right? I would assume that I just doing some simple math here, about our share of the state's population is about 30,000 people. So it'd be interesting to see, 30,000 out of the 150,000, make that clear. It would be interesting to see whether or not 30,000 people in our community in Sedgwick County, would that be leftover doses for other people, for example, the EMS personnel, or are we going to use up 30,000 doses for hospital staff and LTC residents and staff? That's really my question. So that's kind of a math equation there, but we ought to maybe think that through and have a strategic plan, so when that gets here, we know how much to expect for each of those populations and how much will be left over. We can start planning for that. Okay.
Absolutely.
Commissioners, Julie Stimson is on the phone here in EM, and let me see if she wants a shot at the question regarding total numbers needed. Julie, are you on the phone? You have to unmute this. Julie, can you hear me? Okay. Well, let me have Julie see if she has the quantitation on that, Commissioner. And then as far as EMS and fire, we have.
Okay, I'm on the line. Can you hear me?
Yep, we got you, Julie. Do you want to, did you hear Commissioner Howell's question? And then as far as EMS and fire.
If you could repeat it, that would be good.
Well, essentially, he wants to know of the initial vaccine doses.
Good.
Have we quantitated how many doses we'll need to cover all hospital personnel and nursing home staffing? Do we know what that number is?
At the moment, I do not know what that number is, but that is certainly something that we can look more into to get specifics.
All right, very good. Okay, thank you. You can go ahead and mute again.
Okay, you're welcome.
Just a final comment there. Just a final comment there again. So I think it's something we can answer pretty quickly, I would think. And then I want to make sure I heard you correctly. You said that there's still FDA approval required before we can start administering these. In other words, there's still a step that has to happen in addition to getting the doses in our possession. There still is a government approval that needs to be checked off still before we can start administering this.
Correct.
And that's expected this next week?
Thursday, the Pfizer, it should be reviewed on Thursday. Anticipation is if it's approved, then they'll ship soon after, and Moderna, I think, is the following Thursday. So
They won't ship until that's complete.
That's correct.
All right, thank you very much.
And just one other comment, Commissioner, on Commissioner Howell's question. With EMS and fire, we view them as part of the medical system, absolutely, and have advocated from the beginning that those that are making emergency medical calls in the community should have access to vaccine early. So appreciate that comment.
And Commissioner Cruz?
Thank you, Chairman. Commissioner-elect Lopez asked the question around, testing and language. Are we going to be, do you know if KDHE is going to have the testing sites available, the information around where they're at in different languages?
the well health sites.
Right.
I cannot recall. I think that they have a plan for that, but I can't definitively answer that right now. I'll try and get that answer and get it to all of you.
Okay, thank you for that.
Commissioner Dennis?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you tell me what date that we're going to get those new freezers and how many doses that they'll store?
Last date that I saw for delivery was the 28th of December, and I don't have at the top of my mind the capacity, but I will get that for you and send that information.
Okay, and I understand that places like Walgreens are going to be the pharmacy of choice for the long-term care facilities. At least that's what I saw on the news the other night. CVS and Walgreens are going to be the ones that get that. Do you know if we've got storage facilities at Walgreens and the Walgreens stores here in Wichita and Sedgwick County that can store that at those temperatures?
My understanding is that for a facility to be identified as a pre-positioned recipient, they have to have that capacity. I'm not exactly sure how much Walgreens or CVS or any of the other Dillons or any of the other chains in the county may have, but my understanding is that was a requirement to be a pre-positioned recipient.
Okay. My final question is there a difference between dose 1 and dose 2?
What we've seen so far is that efficacy hits somewhere between 50 and 70% after the initial dose, and the second dose is kind of a booster and increases the efficacy from there. And so I don't know that the doses are different, but the impact on the systems are different. My guess is the doses are probably the same, but the impact on the systems are different.
Okay. Well, the reason I asked that question, and I asked it of Adrian last night at the Citizens Advisory Board, and I'll repeat it today so that everybody can hear my question, is that say that we get 30,000 doses in today, and with that we could inoculate 15,000 people, or can we inoculate 30,000 people and then a month later when we get another delivery do the second dose for those 30,000 rather than having to bank 15,000 that are just sitting there not doing anyone good for the next month?
And that's an interesting question, and I think some of it depends on your trust in the supply chain and how assured you are that that second shipment is also going to be, if, for example, the first shipment to Kansas is 24,000 doses, how confident is everyone that next week or within 2.5 weeks we'll get that second shipment of 24,000? I don't know that question has been answered yet.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Tim, I don't see any other questions. Appreciate the update, and as been stated by yourself and others, we'll know more when we know more, and accuracy will be to be forthcoming.
Absolutely. Some of the things that I said today will not come to pass, I'm certain, but we'll continue to update as we get information.
Okay.
Updated quarantine policy.
Oh, okay. Thanks for the reminder, Tom. So on last Friday, I believe it was, there's an image there too. The KDHE adopted the CDC recommended modified quarantine timeline, and there are two different durations. One is a 7-day with testing, and another is a 10-day without testing. And so, as you can see, based on your date of exposure, if you wait 6 days, it's important that you monitor your symptoms for 14 days after your expected exposure. If you're not seeing symptoms, on day 6, get a PCR test for COVID. As your results come back negative, after you quarantine for 7 days, including that test on the 6th, on day 8, you can return to work or school. If you don't have symptoms and you don't test, quarantine for 10 full days. On day 11, you can return to work or to school. And again, if you need to monitor yourself for symptoms for the full 14-day period. If you become symptomatic on day 13, for example, then it becomes important to isolate, continue to monitor, and you apply the isolation timeline to yourself. But it's 7 days with a test on day 6, stay in quarantine for 7 days, return to work on day 8, or quarantine for 10 days, return to work on day 11. And Dr. Minns continues to consider alternatives to this and what alternatives may be possible. And again, there's some confusing communication that's come out of KDHE on that topic, but he is making an effort to connect with Dr. Norman at KDHE to make sure that they're both on the same page for any other changes that they would make to this.
Okay. Commissioner Cruz.
Thank you. So this is, where does the negative test come in?
So on day 6, if you, again, no symptoms, take your test on day 6. You should get your results, particularly if you're using one of the MDL sites. You should have your results on day 7. If you're negative in that test, then on day 8 you can return to work. If you choose not to test, then you need to wait until 10 days without symptoms, returning to work on the 11th day.
Is there a way I could get both of these like side by side? Because you got the 7-day quarantine, then you got the 10-day quarantine. Okay, that's my question. Thank you.
Sure.
Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just I also need to clarify some things here. So on the one chart that shows a test on day 6, if you get the results back that day, you still have to quarantine beyond that?
Yes.
To what day?
That's the same graphic.
Quarantine 7 days. So
Quarantine is 7 days.
Quarantine for 7 days, return to work on the 8th day, or with a test, or no test, quarantine for 10 days, and return to work on the 11th day.
Okay. Now, if someone gets a test on day 5, that's not.
Quarantine for 7 days.
Okay.
And return to work on the 8th day.
I'm just saying, so again, if they get a test on the 5th day after exposure, and it's negative, it's still 7 days, but does that day, the test on the 5th day would count, though? My point is, it's earlier in the incubation period.
You would continue, it would be really, really important that you monitor yourself for symptoms very closely if you're not going to retest. If you're going to test early, again, the recommendation, the guidelines are test on day 6, not on day 5. Somebody jumps the gun, tests on day 5, they're still not exhibiting symptoms, they're probably going to be okay, but they're not following protocol. Protocol is test on day 6.
Okay.
Or not test, quarantine 10 days, and then go to work on day 11.
I guess it depends on the test site that you're going to. So for example, the one you described a moment ago, you said was 48 to 72 hours. And if you were trying to say, I don't have symptoms, I need to get back to work, you'd want to test on day 5 if possible, because that would hopefully get you back to, again, if you have no symptoms through the 7th day, then on day 8, you're free to go back to regular life.
All I can recommend is what
Okay.
CDC and KDHE recommend.
I guess I would just say,
Test on
it
day
seems like
6.
it's fairly critical to have, test results come back fairly responsive, which again, I'll highlight once again, the WSU lab has about twice the throughput. Again, I'm sure this other test site's going to be great, but WSU lab has about twice the throughput and about half the time to get the results. So once again, if you're trying to get back to work and you're asymptomatic and you had an exposure, I think that it's really important for you to get tested. As you said, on day 6 would be a great day to get tested on, but to get the results within 24 hours, get you back to work on day 8. So that's kind of the point I'm making here. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other questions, Tim. Thanks for the update.
Thank you.
Okay.
Who wants to show them the cards? Do they have them?
Good morning, Commissioners. Akeem Ashford, Communications Director. This is the legislative platform portion. So in front of you, you've got 2 examples. The first is kind of the standard palm card that you all approved last year. So we just kind of kept that same design, added in the approved language that you all approved for the priority issues. So you can see number 1 through 5 with the explanations there for you. On the back, you've got the joint partner statement. That is just kind of a placeholder language. I did have a conversation with Jim Jonas, who's my counterpart over at the city. They are working through their legislative platform. Andrew Weens has also been brought into that conversation with the chamber. Basically, the 3 of us are going to sit down once they figure out their legislative platform to come up with a joint partner statement, and that's that language that will go there in the gray box. Followed by that, you've got the supporting issues of importance that you all approved. There is some language. We can kind of work with this space. I think this was brought up by Commissioner Dennis early on from last year's design to be able to put those supporting items there. So, of course, we can tweak that as you guys see fit. But we've got some language there to kind of help people who are given these cards help understand those supporting issues of importance. Next, you've got more information. So this was actually a kudo to Tony, our arts director, who always does a phenomenal job. And basically, this is a QR code. So this will allow folks who have this card to be able to scan with their cell phones. All they have to do is pull up their camera. You scan that QR code, it takes you to the legislative platform digitally online. And then at the bottom, you've got the points of contact for each commissioner, as well as Jason and myself. So that's the large palm card there. The next portion you have is this little small kind of business card. This was kind of an addition to some questions of other items that we could possibly hand out. So say if you don't have a palm card and you only have space for a business card, that's what this has. This only has the priority issues. We didn't really have room to put the supporting issues, but to make up for that, we also have that QR code on the back of that card so that folks can, again, take their camera, scan it, and then pull up the entire list of priority issues as well as supporting issues. The priority issues are online. They're on the Sedgwick County website already. We are working on the supporting issues of importance. We hope to get those up in the coming days. And I'll take questions.
Okay, well, I think I like the format personally. I just saw it this morning when you passed these out. Thanks for clarifying the joint partner statement area is just a placeholder. area.
Yes, sir.
I was a little confused on that, but for that matter, I mean, it looks consistent with what we've been talking about, and I like the way that you can get to it both ways on the business card and the rejoinder card. So, Commissioner Glasscock.
Yeah, so given that you're able to visit the website with more information, kind of a continuation with one of Commissioner Howell's suggestions with the public safety, it would be great if we could maybe have people tell stories of why we need this as well, sort of showing, when people are showing a legislator, they can click on it, they can, connect to somebody in Sedgwick County and show like a real face behind a lot of these issues. And I think that might help, when you're talking to legislators, to show somebody behind it as well. If somebody could do a short video of why this would positively impact their life.
You bet.
So don't necessarily want to add more work to you guys, but I think that might be a good thing to stand out to the legislators when you're talking to them, to try to create that personal aspect as well.
Absolutely, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner Glasscock. Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to, I appreciate the comments of Commissioner Glasscock. I think that's a very great idea. I just wanted to commend Tony and Akeem. You've done a great job this year putting this together. The graphics are excellent. I think this is going to be very effective. To the extent we have a session that has time to deal with these types of issues, I think this is going to be a great tool to move our ideas and needs forward. And so I want to say thank you for a good job. It's very impressive what you've done for both of you. Thank you very, very much. Good job, Tony.
Okay, Commissioner Dennis.
Thank you, Akeem. Thanks, Tony, for what you've done. I really do like the way that you put this together. Oh, sorry. Apologize. Thank you, Akeem and Tony. I appreciate what you've done. I do like what we've put together this year. And I just tried the QR code on both these cards, and they both work. So kudos to that. So I think we're well on the way to getting this where we can carry it up to Topeka and work with our legislators. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thanks, Akeem. It's a compliment when you just, the lights come on just for you to get compliments and no big questions. So
Thank you, Chairman.
I know we worked through this. Mike, thanks for your guidance as well and help on all this as well. So thank you.
That's all staff had, sir.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the bench? I don't see any. So we will adjourn until tomorrow morning at regular scheduled meeting. Adjourn.
Are you meeting